there is a real risk that some of those markets may not exist for us going forward.
Rabobank says now is not the time for farmers to ease up on their push to cut farm emissions. You agree with, I guess, what the government is doing in terms of taking some of that pressure off, but at the same time you're saying, but hey, don't ease up.
Absolutely. And so I think that regulatory breather is how we've described it in the paper is good because it creates certainty and removes some of that regulatory risk, I guess, from farmers and food producers. But the other thing is we know our New Zealand farmers and growers are some of the most efficient in the world. What we're saying is let's not take the foot off the pedal in terms of maintaining that position. So what we're saying is let's maintain our emissions edge, let's keep moving forward, and I think it's a good thing we can keep moving forward from an industry-led perspective as opposed to regulatory-led. So I think there's a big opportunity there to do that.
So, I mean, aside from, I guess, the view that most people would have about climate change and that if you can reduce emissions to help take the pressure off a warming climate, but do you see it as a competitive edge for New Zealand farmers?
I do, because I think our position in the marketplace now is, New Zealand food producers are highly regarded as some of the most efficient when it comes to producing what we produce using our natural resources. And I think if we can maintain that position, that will give us a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Because the flip side, we're also seeing it coming into trade agreements and things like that. So if we're not actually making progress, continuing to make progress from driving emissions down, there is a real risk that some of those markets may not exist for us going forward. So, and I think that's important to understand.
And you also make the point that many more countries we're trading into that are got climate-related disclosures, financial disclosures.
Yeah.
But of course we have here too. Rabobank's required to.
Yep.
How is that starting to drive your business when you look at issues like this?
Well, you're right. This is the first year we've had mandatory climate-related disclosures. I think it's been quite educational for us. You look at it obviously from a portfolio perspective. You look at it from your own emissions footprint, and I think the other piece of work that was really useful was we spent quite a bit of time running different scenarios. Different scenarios in 2050 or even 2100. If the climate is 2 degrees warmer, if it's hot house situation, what does that look like? Because with climate change, there's certainly some risks around it, but there are opportunities. And what does that look like from us as a trading nation?
Well, I wonder in terms of the opportunities, say from your business's perspective, the bank's perspective, if Farmer A is doing a hell of a lot to reduce his or her emissions and Farmer B's dragging the chain, is it likely that those two farmers would get different deals when it came to, say, borrowing money or what have you?
I think we're not at that stage yet, but I think in terms of, if you look at risk profile, I think the risk profile over time will change for those two businesses that you've just given the example of. So I think in time that's where it'll end up, or where it's heading towards. But what we need for a start, and we call this out in the white paper, is some standard sort of benchmarking, so we understand what good looks like first, and then how does that then motivate those leading farmers to do more, but also those who perhaps aren't at that leading edge but want to be. What are the lessons they can learn, and how do they adapt to those more efficient farming practices?
And what's the urgency for getting that kind of standard framework in place?
Well, I think it's a key foundational point, I think. And, we've got, as a country, we've got commitments, 2030 commitments, 2050 commitments. So I think, what we call out in the white paper is we need to move forward with some urgency and, as we've said at the start, not sit back and take this regulatory breather or regulatory position as a sign to, we can just relax. I think we need to keep some urgency there, but coming from within the industry, and I think that's the key point.
And of course, New Zealand farming, horticulture isn't immune from the impacts of climate change.
No.
Think of Cyclone Gabrielle. Are you looking now more closely at areas that you might see as that more climate risk compared to others, and how you'd price those in terms of risk? And
well, I think first of all, I think our farmers and growers have been adapting for a long time, forever really, in terms of changing climate. Climate change is not a new thing, but I think the impacts are certainly a lot more acute now than they've been. So our farmers and growers, I think, are adapting well, and we're looking to help them where we can to adapt to those. Whether that be riparian plantings, flood protection, those type of things. And then we'll also look at, from a portfolio perspective, different areas, different locations. If they're prone to more climate-related risks, then that will be reflected in the risk profile as well. So,
how much more does it figure in the bank's mind, say, compared to 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Oh, look, it's definitely it's a lot more front and centre now. There's no doubt about it. And as touched on earlier, we've got our own obligations from climate-related disclosures. That's going to continue to intensify in terms of the requirements under those standards. And so, it's very much front and centre for us and all businesses, and I think that's the point. We need to continue to do our bit. Fortunately, our farmers and growers, as I say, are some of the best around, and so they are adapting all the way. We're there to help them and work alongside industry to make the improvements.
Rabobank's a global bank, obviously, so where does New Zealand fit within that global bank?
Yeah.
In terms of risk and how we're dealing with climate change, are we up the top? Are we?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So Rabobank, we're in about 36, 37 countries. Outside the Netherlands, it's 100% food and agri. That's all we look at. New Zealand market is definitely seen at the leading edge from a climate adaptation perspective and efficiency when it comes to food production. And I think that's because we've got some wonderful attributes. We've got our great temperate climate. We've got grass-based production systems. All very emissions efficient right now. We just need to maintain that momentum.
And does that then mean the kind of access to capital should remain relatively easier?
Yeah. Look, there's no constraints from our perspective. We are part of a global bank, but this, as I say, is a very important market. We see it as a market that we want to really stay strong, and we want to continue to grow our presence in. And because, as I say, we're some of the most efficient food producing systems globally, and we want to maintain that position.
But are you looking to put capital directly into what you see as climate friendly initiatives, technologies?
We've joined AgriZero New Zealand, which is a collaboration of 10 private sector companies now, and so we're really proud of the fact we've been involved in that. And the whole purpose of that is to try and bring forward technology and research and development to put tools in the hands of farmers and growers, and so that's one way we've done that, and we'll continue to look for other ways that we can help our food producers.
NBR is offering a special July-only deal, $399 for a year's subscription, so you'll be able to find me on nbr.co.nz.